She didn't kill her daughter, but everyone, including the man she loved, believed she did. For months, Ava carried the guilt of a crime she never committed, until one truth changed everything. This is the story of a Black woman blamed for her child's death, and the billionaire who helped her heal through truth, forgiveness, and love. Before we begin, if my story touches your heart, please subscribe, share this video with someone who needs hope, and comment below telling us where you're watching from. Your support means everything and helps us bring more stories like this to life. Now let's begin. The rain hammered against the windows like bullets. But inside the Hadley home, the real storm was the silence. Ava Hadley stood in the bedroom doorway, her suitcase half-packed, her hands trembling as she folded another shirt. Her face was hollow, ghostly pale, with dark circles carved deep beneath her eyes from months of sleepless nights. She looked like a woman who'd already died inside. Josh sat on the edge of their bed, his head in his hands, his voice cold and sharp as broken glass. "You killed our daughter, Ava." The words hung in the air like poison. Ava's hands froze mid-fold. She didn't turn around. She'd heard those words before, too many times. But this time they hit differently. This time they felt final. "You left the medicine out," Josh continued, his voice rising with bitter accusation. "You were distracted, careless. You're a nurse, for God's sake. You should have known." Ava's lips trembled. She wanted to scream, to cry, to defend herself. But what was the point? The guilt had already consumed her. The nightmares had already stolen her sanity. And Josh, the man she'd once loved with her whole heart, had become her executioner. Without a word, she zipped her suitcase shut. Josh looked up, his face twisted with something between rage and devastation. "That's it? You're just leaving?" Ava finally turned to face him, and the emptiness in her eyes made him flinch. "You've already left me, Josh," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You left me the day Amelia died." She walked past him, past the living room where Amelia's toys still sat untouched in the corner, past the kitchen where her daughter's laughter used to echo during breakfast. And she walked out into the rain. The door closed behind her with a quiet click, the sound of a life ending. 6 months later, Ava Hadley stood in the pediatric wing of St. Bridget's Children's Hospital, wearing scrubs and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. To her colleagues, she was calm, competent, compassionate. She was the nurse who stayed late, who volunteered for extra shifts, who held crying parents in the waiting room and whispered, "Your child is going to be okay." But they didn't know. They didn't know about the nightmares that ripped her from sleep every night. Visions of Amelia's tiny face turning blue, the sound of her choking, the taste of guilt that never, ever left her tongue. They didn't know that every child she saved felt like penance for the one she couldn't. She threw herself into her work, desperate to drown in it, to lose herself in saving other people's children since she'd failed to save her own. But grief, Ava learned, waits, it watches, and it follows you everywhere. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when Oliver Caldwell walked into St. Bridget's. He wasn't what Ava expected. Billionaires, in her experience, wore arrogance like cologne. But Oliver Caldwell was different. Tall, yes, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that spoke of wealth without screaming it. But there was something gentle in his eyes, something soft and sad and deeply human. He was there to discuss sponsoring treatment for children with rare illnesses through his foundation. Ava had been assigned to assist him with the program proposal. Director Matthews made the introductions in the conference room. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Ava Hadley, one of our finest pediatric nurses. She'll be walking you through our current treatment protocols and patient care systems." "Ms. Hadley," Oliver said, extending his hand with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I've heard wonderful things about your work here. Director Matthews tells me you have an exceptional way with the children." Ava shook his hand, noting the firmness of his grip, the genuine warmth in his touch. Her professional mask sliding into place. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. I'm happy to help with the program." They sat down, and Ava began presenting the hospital's needs: statistics, treatment gaps, financial constraints. She spoke with precision and passion, her expertise evident in every word. Oliver found himself captivated, not just by the information, but by her. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about the children. The way her voice softened when she mentioned a little boy who'd beaten leukemia last month. The way her hands moved expressively as she explained complex medical procedures in terms that made sense. "You really love what you do," Oliver observed quietly, interrupting her mid-sentence about chemotherapy protocols. Ava paused, caught off guard. Yes, these children deserve every fighting chance. It's more than that, though, isn't it? Oliver leaned forward, his gaze intent but kind. The way you talk about them, like each one matters personally to you, that's rare. Most medical professionals maintain distance to protect themselves. Ava's breath caught. Something in his tone, understanding without judgment, made her walls crack just slightly. "Distance doesn't save lives," she said softly. "Caring does." Oliver smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "I couldn't agree more. That's exactly why I started my foundation. Numbers on a page don't change the world. People who care do." Their eyes met, and for just a moment, something shifted in the air between them. Ava felt it, a recognition, a resonance, like meeting someone who spoke the same language of grief and purpose. "Tell me," Oliver said, his voice gentle, "what do you think these children need most?" Not in medical terms, but as a nurse who sees them every day. Ava considered the question carefully. "Hope," she finally answered. "They need to know that someone believes they can survive, that they're worth fighting for, that their lives have value beyond their diagnosis." Oliver's eyes shimmered with emotion. That's beautiful and wise." He paused, then added quietly, "You give them that, don't you? Hope." Ava looked down at her hands, a shadow crossing her face. "I try," she whispered. "I try every single day." Oliver saw it then, the weight she carried, the sadness she tried to hide behind competence and compassion. And something in his chest tightened with the inexplicable need to understand her, to know her story, to somehow ease the burden she carried. "Ms. Hadley," "Ava," she corrected softly, surprising herself. "You can call me Ava." "Ava," Oliver repeated, and her name on his lips sounded like something precious. "I have a feeling this partnership is going to be the beginning of something important." He didn't know how right he was. Over the following weeks, Oliver kept returning. Officially, it was for meetings, paperwork, program details, but secretly, he came back because being near Ava felt like breathing air after drowning. They started talking, really talking, not about hospital budgets or program logistics, but about life, about loss, about pain. One evening, after a particularly long meeting, they sat together in the hospital garden as the sun set in shades of amber and gold. "Why do you do this?" Ava asked softly, gesturing toward the hospital. "The foundation, the charity work. Most people in your position would just write a check and move on." Oliver was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "I lost my younger sister when I was 17, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Her name was Lily. She had an infection, completely curable. But my parents, they were too busy, too distracted. They ignored the signs until it was too late." His jaw tightened. "She died in my arms, Ava. And I swore that day that I'd never let another child suffer because someone wasn't paying attention." Ava's breath caught. She reached out instinctively and placed her hand over his. "I'm so sorry, Oliver." He looked down at her hand on his, and something warm flickered in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. "What about you?" he asked gently. "You carry something heavy. I can see it." Ava pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. "I had a daughter," she whispered. "Her name was Amelia." The word had hung between them like a ghost. Oliver didn't push. He simply sat with her in the silence, and somehow that meant everything. It happened on a Wednesday night, 3 months after they'd first met. Oliver had stopped by the hospital to drop off signed documents for the foundation program. It was late, almost 9 p.m., and he was about to leave when the emergency alarm started blaring. "Code Blue, NICU, Code Blue!" Oliver's heart lurched. He knew that meant a child was in critical condition. Without thinking, he followed the rush of medical staff down the corridor. He spotted Ava sprinting toward the NICU, her face set in fierce determination. The scene inside was chaos. A premature baby, barely 2 pounds, 26 weeks gestation, had been rushed in by ambulance. She'd been born in a taxi on the way to the hospital. Her teenage mother was hysterical in the hallway, screaming, begging God not to take her baby. The infant's skin was translucent, blue-tinged. Her chest barely moved. The monitors screamed their warnings. "She's not getting enough oxygen," one doctor shouted. Heart rate dropping, 60, 55. "Where's respiratory? We need respiratory now." Ava was already at the incubator, her hands steady despite the chaos, attaching monitors with practiced precision. "Someone get the mother sedated before she hurts herself," a nurse yelled from the hallway. Oliver stood frozen in the doorway, watching Ava work. Her focus was absolute. Her movements were graceful, efficient, purposeful. "Talk to me, Ava," Dr. Richardson said urgently. "What are we looking at?" "Respiratory distress syndrome," Ava said calmly, her eyes never leaving the baby. "Underdeveloped lungs. She needs surfactant immediately and CPAP support." "We don't have time to wait for respiratory." "Then I'll do it," Ava said firmly. "Get me the kit." Oliver watched, transfixed, as Ava intubated the tiny infant with hands that didn't shake, with a steadiness that spoke of years of experience and unshakable focus. Minutes felt like hours. The baby's oxygen levels began to climb. Slowly, painfully, slowly. "Come on, sweetheart," Ava whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "Come on, fight for me. You're so strong. Just breathe, baby girl. Breathe." Oliver felt tears prick his eyes. "Heart rate stabilizing," a nurse announced. 70, 80, 90. Oxygen saturation at 85% and climbing. She's doing it. She's actually doing it. For 3 straight hours, the medical team worked. And through it all, Ava never left the baby's side. She adjusted monitors, administered medications, whispered encouragement to a child too small to understand words, but somehow responding to the love in her voice. Oliver stayed too. He couldn't leave. He found himself praying, something he hadn't done since Lily died, praying for this tiny, fragile life to hold on. At midnight, the baby's vitals stabilized. Her oxygen levels were strong, her heart rate was steady. Her color had shifted from blue to the faintest pink. The teenage mother was allowed into the NICU, and she collapsed at the incubator, sobbing with relief, touching the glass that separated her from her daughter. "She's going to make it?" she whispered, looking up at Ava with desperate hope. Ava smiled through her exhaustion. "She's a fighter, just like her mama." The mother broke down completely, and Ava held her while she cried. Dr. Richardson pulled Ava aside. "You saved her life, if you hadn't moved as fast as you did." "We saved her," Ava corrected quietly. "All of us." The team finally dispersed, exhausted, emotionally drained. Oliver found Ava in the hallway, leaning against the wall, her scrubs stained, her hair falling out of its ponytail, her face pale and drawn. But she was shaking, trembling from head to toe. "Ava?" Oliver approached carefully, his voice gentle. "Ava, you were incredible in there. You saved that baby's life." Ava looked up at him, and the expression on her face shattered him. Her eyes were hollow, haunted, filled with a grief so deep it seemed bottomless. "I couldn't save mine," she choked out, her voice raw with anguish. "I couldn't save Amelia." Oliver's heart broke. "Ava," but she was already sliding down the wall, her legs giving out, her whole body racked with sobs. Oliver dropped to his knees beside her and pulled her into his arms without hesitation. She collapsed against his chest, and for the first time in months, Ava let herself completely shatter. "She was only 3 years old," Ava sobbed, her fingers clutching his shirt like a lifeline. 3 years old, Oliver. She was laughing 1 minute, laughing and playing with her dolls, and then she collapsed. Just fell to the floor. Oliver held her tighter, his own eyes burning with tears. "I called 911. I did CPR. I did everything right, everything I was trained to do. But by the time we got to the hospital, she was already. Her voice broke completely. "They said she ingested medication," Ava continued, her words tumbling out between sobs. "My pain medication. They found it in her system. I'd left it on my dressing table that morning. I was so tired, so distracted, and I left it there. And Josh, he told me it was my fault. The doctors, they looked at me like I was a monster. Like, what kind of mother leaves medication where her child can reach it? Ava, no, he was right, Oliver, she cried, looking up at him with devastated eyes. I'm a nurse. I should have known better. I should have been more careful. And now my baby is dead because I was careless. Stop, Oliver said fiercely, cupping her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Stop it, Ava. Listen to me. His voice was shaking with emotion, his eyes blazing with intensity. You are not a monster. You are the most compassionate, dedicated, loving person I have ever met. What happened to Amelia, it was a tragedy. A horrible, devastating tragedy, but it was not your fault. You don't understand. I do understand, Oliver interrupted, his voice breaking. I understand what it's like to blame yourself for something you couldn't control. I blamed myself for Lily's death for years. I told myself I should have noticed sooner, should have insisted my parents take her to the doctor, should have done something. But Ava, some things are beyond our control. Some things just happen. Ava's tears fell harder, her breath coming in gasping sobs. But I was her mother, she whispered brokenly. I was supposed to protect her. That was my one job, and I failed. No, Oliver said firmly, wiping her tears with his thumbs. You loved her. You gave her 3 beautiful years of life filled with love and laughter and warmth. You were a good mother, Ava, the best mother, and what happened, it doesn't change that. Then why does it hurt so much? Ava cried. Why can't I breathe without feeling guilty? Why do I wake up every morning wishing it had been me instead? Oliver pulled her back against his chest, holding her like she was something infinitely precious and fragile. Because you loved her, he whispered into her hair. Because love doesn't just disappear when someone dies. It stays. And sometimes it hurts more than anything else in the world. They sat there on that hospital floor for what felt like hours, Ava crying in Oliver's arms while he held her and let her grief pour out. I see her everywhere, Ava whispered eventually, her voice hoarse from crying. In every child I treat, every little girl with dark curls, every laugh, every time I save a child, I think, why couldn't I save mine? Oliver's tears finally fell, sliding silently down his cheeks. Amelia would be so proud of you, he said softly. Every child you save, that's her legacy too. You're honoring her by loving these children the way you loved her. Ava pulled back to look at him, seeing the tears on his face, the raw emotion in his eyes. How do you do it? She asked quietly. How do you keep going after losing someone you love? Oliver smiled sadly. I found purpose. I found a way to turn my pain into something that helps others. And he hesitated, then continued softly. I found someone who reminds me that there's still beauty in the world. Still hope. Their eyes met and something electric passed between them. Oliver, Ava breathed. He reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch tender and reverent. You are so much stronger than you know, Ava Hadley, he whispered. And in that moment, something shifted. Something began to heal. 2 weeks later, Ava discovered the connection. She'd been reviewing paperwork for Oliver's foundation when she saw it. Listed among the hospitals in his portfolio was one name that made her blood run cold. Avondale Memorial Hospital, the place where Amelia died. Ava's hands started shaking, her vision blurred. She remembered that hospital. The cold, sterile hallways, the way the doctors had looked at her with judgment in their eyes. The pediatrician who delivered the news with clinical detachment. Your daughter ingested a fatal dose of prescription medication. We did everything we could, but there had been something wrong about it all. Something that had nagged at her even through her grief. The way Josh had been so insistent they not request an autopsy. The way the pediatrician had rushed through the explanation. The way the hospital had closed the case so quickly, without further investigation. She'd felt something was off, something was being hidden. But her grief had been too overwhelming, too consuming. She'd been drowning in guilt and pain, and Josh kept telling her it was her fault, and eventually she'd stopped questioning. But now, seeing that Oliver, the man she'd begun to trust, the man she'd opened her heart to, owned the very hospital that had failed her daughter, Something inside her snapped. That evening, when Oliver arrived at the hospital for their usual meeting, Ava was waiting for him in the garden, her face pale and her eyes blazing with hurt and anger. "Avondale Memorial," she said without preamble, her voice trembling with barely controlled emotion. "You own it." Oliver's face registered confusion. "Yes, the foundation acquired it 2 years ago. We've been working to improve their pediatric care standards." "That's where Amelia died." Ava cut him off, her voice rising with each word. "That's the hospital where my daughter took her last breath." Oliver's face went pale. "Ava, I didn't—" "Of course you didn't know," Ava said bitterly, her voice dripping with anger and pain. "Why would you? You're just another billionaire acquiring this or that, collecting hospitals like trophies, adding them to your portfolio without a care about what actually happens inside those walls." "That's not fair, isn't it?" Ava's voice cracked. "You talk about caring for children, about making a difference, but at the end of the day, you're just buying and selling institutions without knowing, without caring about the lives destroyed there." Tears streamed down her face. "The doctors at Avondale, they were so quick to blame me. So quick to close the case. There was something wrong about it all. Something that never sat right with me. And Josh, he was so insistent we not push for more answers. But I was too destroyed to fight, too broken to question." She wrapped her arms around herself, her whole body shaking. "And now I find out that you own that place. That all this time, while you've been sitting with me, listening to me pour my heart out, you've had control over the very institution that failed my daughter." "Ava, please," Oliver said, his voice desperate. "I swear I didn't know. I would never. If I had known, I would have investigated immediately. I still will. Please, let me look into what happened." "I should have known you weren't so different after all," Ava said, her voice hollow now, defeated. Just another rich man with a savior complex, throwing money at problems without actually understanding the damage his empire does. Oliver flinched as if she'd slapped him. "That's not who I am. You know that's not who I am." "Do I?" Ava whispered brokenly. "I thought I did, but now—" "Ava, please don't do this," Oliver begged, reaching for her. "Whatever happened at that hospital, whatever went wrong with Amelia's case, I will find out. I promise you, let me help you get answers." Ava stepped back, away from his touch, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I need space," she whispered. "I need to think. I can't be around you right now." "Ava, please, Oliver," she said, her voice breaking completely. "Please just go." Oliver stood there, his heart shattering, his hands falling helplessly to his sides. "I'll find the truth," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise you, Ava. I'll find out what really happened to Amelia, and I'll prove to you that I'm not the man you think I am right now." His eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Because you mean everything to me, and I won't lose you." "Not like this." Then he turned and walked away, his shoulders heavy with grief. Ava sank onto the garden bench, watching him disappear into the darkness. And as soon as he was gone, the anger drained out of her, leaving only exhaustion and guilt in its wake. She buried her face in her hands, fresh sobs racking her body. What have I done? She knew, deep down she knew, that Oliver couldn't have known about Amelia's case. That it wasn't his fault, that he genuinely cared about the children in his hospitals. She'd seen the way he talked to the young patients here at St. Bridget's, the way his eyes lit up when a child smiled, the way he remembered their names, their stories. He wasn't just throwing money at a problem. He was genuinely invested. But the pain was too much, the coincidence too cruel. And she'd needed someone to blame, someone to be angry at, someone to push away before they could hurt her more. "I'm transferring my rage onto him," she realized with growing horror. "I'm punishing him for something he didn't do, just like Josh had punished her." The realization made her feel sick, but the wounds were too fresh. The betrayal by the hospital, by Josh, by the doctors who'd rushed to judgment, it all came flooding back. And Oliver's ownership of Avondale felt like salt poured into those raw, bleeding wounds. She wanted to call him back, to apologize, to tell him she didn't mean it. But the words wouldn't come. So she sat there in the garden, alone with her grief and her guilt, as the night grew darker around her. Oliver couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except Ava's devastated face, her broken voice, the way she'd looked at him like he'd betrayed her. He had to know the truth. At 3 a.m., he made a call to his legal team. "I need a full internal review of a case file," he said, his voice cold and commanding. "Amelia Hadley died at Mercy General 6 months ago. I want toxicology reports, hospital logs, doctor's notes, everything. Pharmacy records, security footage if it still exists. And I want to know if there was any deviation from standard protocol." "Sir, that's highly confidential." "I own the hospital," Oliver snapped, "and I want to know if anyone on my staff covered up negligence or malpractice." "Make it happen by morning." "Yes, sir." When the report arrived the next day, Oliver read through it with growing horror. The toxicology report showed that Amelia had ingested a restricted prescription sedative, a powerful medication used for severe anxiety and insomnia, far stronger than simple pain medication. The medication was registered under the name Joshua Hadley at his company's pharmacy. But that wasn't all. The hospital notes from Avondale showed that the attending pediatrician, Dr. Marcus Webb, had indeed flagged foreign medication detected in his initial report. But then, 12 hours after Amelia's death, there was an amendment to the file, signed by the same doctor, stating that the medication was consistent with over-the-counter pain reliever, likely belonging to the mother. Oliver's blood ran cold. Someone had changed the report. He dug deeper, pulling financial records, something he had access to as the hospital owner. There it was, a payment of $50,000 to Dr. Webb's personal account, transferred the day after Amelia's death. The payment came from an account owned by Josh Hadley. Oliver's hand shook as he held the documents. Josh Hadley had paid off the pediatrician to alter the toxicology report, to blame Ava instead of himself. He'd let his wife take the fall for his negligence, let her carry the guilt, the blame, the soul-crushing agony, all while he'd known the truth. Oliver felt sick, but he also felt a burning determination to make this right, to give Ava back the truth she deserved. Oliver found Ava at her apartment that evening. She opened the door with red, swollen eyes, clearly not expecting him. "Oliver, I told you I need space." "I found something," he interrupted gently, his voice urgent but tender. "Ava, please, just let me show you." Something in his tone made her pause. She saw the intensity in his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly as he held a folder. Reluctantly, she let him in. He spread the documents on her kitchen table: toxicology reports, hospital logs, pharmacy records, bank transfers. "Ava," he said softly, his voice shaking with emotion. "It wasn't your fault. It was never your fault." Ava stared at the papers, her face going deathly pale. "What are you talking about?" Oliver took a deep breath. "The medication that killed Amelia, it wasn't your pain reliever. It was a restricted prescription sedative, a powerful drug used for severe anxiety and insomnia." He pointed to the pharmacy record. It was registered under Josh's name. Ava's hands flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No, that can't be." "There's more," Oliver said gently, pulling out another document. The hospital flagged it initially. Dr. Webb noted foreign medication detected in his first report. But then, he showed her the amended file. 12 hours later, he changed his report to say it was consistent with over-the-counter pain medication. Why would he? Oliver showed her the bank transfer. Josh paid him $50,000 to change the report, to make it look like it was your fault instead of his. Ava's whole body started shaking. She gripped the edge of the table, her knees buckling. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no." Oliver caught her before she fell, holding her steady. "I'm so sorry, Ava," he whispered, his own voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, but you need to know the truth. This was never your fault. Josh let you take the blame for something he did." Ava's mind was reeling. Memories flooded back, pieces clicking together with horrible clarity. Ava stood in their bathroom cabinet searching for aspirin. Her hand brushed against a small amber vial tucked in the back, labeled only with JH. "Josh?" she called out. "What's this medication?" Josh appeared in the doorway, casual, unconcerned. "Oh, that? Just supplements for stress. Work's been brutal." He took the bottle from her hand and slipped it into his pocket with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Nothing to worry about, babe." Another memory, the day Amelia died. When Ava had returned from the hospital, numb with grief, her pain medication bottle had been sitting prominently on the bathroom counter, half empty, cap off. She'd stared at it, confused. She could have sworn she'd put it away that morning. But Josh had been there, his face twisted with grief and rage. How could you leave this out, Ava? How could you be so careless? And she'd believed him. God help her, she'd believed him. Ava came back to the present, tears streaming down her face, her breath coming in gasping sobs. He staged it, she whispered, her voice hollow with shock. He cleared out his medication and planted mine. He made it look like it was my fault. Yes, Oliver said quietly, his arms still around her, holding her upright. And he paid off the doctor. He paid someone to lie to cover his tracks. Yes. The full weight of the betrayal crashed over Ava like a tidal wave. She began to sob, deep, wrenching sobs that came from the very depths of her soul. Her legs gave out completely, and she would have collapsed if Oliver hadn't been holding her. All this time I thought I killed my baby. She choked out between gasping breaths. 6 months, Oliver. 6 months of nightmares. 6 months of waking up screaming. 6 months of looking at myself in the mirror and seeing a monster. Her whole body shook with the force of her crying. I couldn't breathe without feeling guilty. I couldn't save other children without thinking I didn't deserve to. I wanted to die. I prayed every night that God would just take me too because I couldn't live with what I'd done. Oliver's own tears fell freely now, his heart breaking for her pain. And he knew, Ava wept, her voice rising to a scream. He knew. He watched me suffer. He watched me fall apart. He held me while I cried and told him I wanted to die, and he knew it wasn't my fault. She collapsed completely against Oliver's chest, her sobs so violent she could barely breathe. I can't bear to see you like this, he whispered fiercely, his lips against her hair. Ava, it's killing me to see you in this much pain. Every tear you cry feels like a knife in my heart. He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him through her tears. Let me help you, he said, his voice raw with emotion. Please, Ava, let me take this burden from you. Let me carry it with you. You don't have to be strong anymore. You don't have to face this alone. Oliver, she sobbed, her voice breaking on his name. I love you, he said desperately, tears streaming down his own face now. God help me, Ava. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love your strength, your compassion, your fierce heart. I love the way you fight for those children every single day, even when you're breaking inside. I love everything about you. His thumbs wiped at her tears, but they kept falling. I know this is the worst possible timing. I know you're hurting and you need to process all of this, but I need you to know I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you need, whatever it takes, I'm here. Ava's hands came up to grip his wrists, holding on to him like he was her anchor in a storm. I'm so tired of hurting, she whispered brokenly. I'm so tired of carrying this weight. Then let me carry it with you, Oliver said softly, pressing his forehead against hers. Let me love you through this. Let me be the one who reminds you every single day that you are not a monster. That you never were. That you are the most beautiful, strongest, most incredible woman I have ever known. Fresh sobs racked Ava's body, but this time there was something different in them. Not just grief, but release. The beginning of healing. I was so cruel to you, she wept. In the garden, I said terrible things. Shh, Oliver soothed, pulling her back against his chest. You were hurt. You were scared. I understood then, and I understand now. None of that matters. How can you love someone as broken as me? Ava asked, her voice small and fragile. Oliver pulled back to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes took her breath away. You're not broken, Ava, he said fiercely. You're wounded. There's a difference. Broken things can't be fixed, but wounds can heal, and I want to be part of your healing. If you'll let me? He brushed a strand of hair away from her tear-stained face with infinite tenderness. Besides, he added softly, I'm pretty wounded myself. Maybe we can heal together. Ava looked at him, really looked at him, this man who'd fought for her truth, who'd held her while she shattered, who'd looked at all her pain and darkness and loved her anyway. I'm so scared, she whispered. I know, Oliver said gently. So am I, but maybe that's okay. Maybe being scared means we have something worth protecting. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. You don't have to decide anything right now. Take your time. Process everything. But know this, I meant what I said. I love you, Ava Hadley, and I'm not going anywhere. Ava buried her face in his chest again, letting herself be held, letting herself be loved. For the first time in 6 months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could breathe again. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered against his shirt. I'm terrified and broken, and I don't know if I'm ready, but I think I love you, Oliver. Oliver's arms tightened around her, and she felt his chest heave with a sob he'd been holding back. That's enough, he whispered into her hair. That's more than enough. We'll figure out the rest together. They stayed like that for a long time, two wounded souls holding each other, finding strength in their shared brokenness, beginning the slow, painful, beautiful process of healing. But first, Ava had something she needed to do. She needed to face Josh, to look him in the eyes and demand the truth from his own lips. And this time she would not be silenced. If this story has grabbed hold of your heart, if you're feeling the weight of Ava's pain and the depth of Oliver's love, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, leave a super thanks if you're able, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything and helps us continue bringing these powerful stories to life. Are you Team Ava? What would you do in her situation? Take a pause and drop a comment below to let us know. Now, let's see what happens when the truth finally comes to light. Rain poured from the sky as Ava's car screeched to a stop in front of her old house. The house where Amelia had lived, laughed, died. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. You can do this, she told herself. You need to do this. Lightning split the sky as she finally stepped out of the car, the rain immediately soaking through her clothes. But she didn't care. She barely felt it. All she could feel was the rage burning in her chest, hot and righteous and long overdue. She stormed through the front door without knocking. This had been her home once, before Josh destroyed everything. Josh was in the living room, sitting on the couch with a glass of whiskey, looking older and more haggard than she remembered. When he saw her standing there, dripping wet, her eyes blazing with fury, he froze. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. Ava! His voice was barely a whisper. What are you? You knew, she said, her voice shaking with rage and anguish. All this time you knew. The color drained from Josh's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Ava screamed, her voice echoing through the house like thunder. Not anymore, Josh. I know everything. She threw the folder Oliver had given her onto the coffee table. Documents scattered across the surface. Toxicology reports, pharmacy records, bank transfers. Josh stared at them, his face going from white to gray. Your medication killed her, Ava continued, her voice breaking with emotion. Your prescription sedative, the one you told me was just supplements for stress. That's what Amelia ingested, not my pain reliever. Yours. Ava, please. Josh stood up, his hands raised defensively. And then you paid off Dr. Webb. Ava's voice rose to a scream. $50,000 to change the toxicology report. To make it look like it was my medication? To make everyone believe I killed our daughter? Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rain still dripping from her hair. You let me take the blame, she choked out. You stood there and watched me fall apart. You held me while I sobbed and told you I wanted to die. You listened to me say I was a monster. And you said nothing! Josh's legs seemed to give out. He sank back onto the couch, his face crumpling. I panicked, he whispered hoarsely. You panicked? Ava's voice was incredulous, sharp as a blade. Our daughter was dead, and you panicked about your career? It wasn't supposed to happen, Josh said desperately, his voice rising. I was stressed. You know how demanding my job was. The doctor prescribed me something to help me sleep, to manage my anxiety. I kept it in the bathroom cabinet. I thought it was safe. You thought wrong, Ava shouted. And when she found it, when she ingested it, you made a choice. You chose to protect yourself instead of telling the truth. I didn't mean for it to happen. Josh was crying now, his face twisted with anguish. I loved Amelia. She was my daughter too. Then why? Ava screamed, her voice breaking completely. Why did you let me believe it was my fault? Why did you torture me? Why did you tell me every single day that I killed her? Josh buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Because I was terrified, he choked out. When the paramedics came, I saw the bottle, my bottle, on the floor in her room. She must have found it, must have thought they were candy or, I don't know. But I knew it was mine. He looked up at her, his face wet with tears and snot, looking pathetic and broken. While you were in the ambulance with her, I cleaned everything up. I found your pain medication in the bathroom, and I emptied some of the pills and left the bottle on the counter. Made it look like you'd been careless. Ava felt bile rise in her throat. You staged a crime scene while our daughter was dying. I thought they might not find it, Josh said desperately. I thought maybe they'd just say it was sudden infant death or something. But then they did the toxicology, and Dr. Webb called me. He said they'd found medication in her system. He was going to report it. Josh's voice dropped to barely a whisper. So I offered him money to change the report, to say it was over-the-counter medication, to point to you instead of me. Ava stared at him, her entire body trembling with rage and disgust. Do you have any idea what you did to me? She asked, her voice deadly quiet now. I couldn't sleep, Josh. I had nightmares every single night. I'd wake up screaming, seeing her face, hearing her choking. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without hating what I saw. Her voice rose again. I thought about killing myself, multiple times. I stood on the edge of a bridge one night, ready to jump because I couldn't live with the guilt of what I thought I'd done. Josh's face contorted with horror. Ava, no, yes, she screamed. The only reason I didn't was because some stranger talked me down. And you, the person who was supposed to love me, who was supposed to protect me, you knew. You knew it wasn't my fault, and you let me suffer anyway. I'm sorry, Josh sobbed. I'm so sorry, Ava. Please, I was weak. I was selfish. I was terrified of losing everything. You didn't lose everything, Ava said coldly. You destroyed everything. You destroyed our daughter's chance at justice. You destroyed our marriage. You destroyed me. She took a step closer, her eyes blazing. But you know what? You don't get to do that anymore. You don't get to make me the villain in your story. You don't get to walk around free while I carry your guilt. What are you saying? Josh asked, fear creeping into his voice. I'm saying I have all the evidence, Ava said, her voice steady now, strong. The real toxicology report. The pharmacy records showing the medication was yours. The bank transfer to Dr. Webb. Oliver made sure I had everything. Josh's eyes widened. Oliver, who's someone who actually cares about the truth, Ava cut him off. Someone who helped me find it when you spent 6 months burying it. She picked up one of the documents from the table. Tomorrow, I'm taking all of this to the police. You're going to face charges for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and criminal negligence. Dr. Webb will face charges too. Ava, please. Josh stood up, reaching for her. Please don't do this. Think about what it will do to both of us. The media will destroy us. Ava jerked away from his touch like it burned. The media can say whatever they want, she said quietly. Because for the first time in 6 months, I'll know the truth, and so will everyone else. She walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. You know what the worst part is, Josh? She asked softly. It's not even that you let our daughter die because of your carelessness. It's that when given the choice between protecting me, your wife, the woman you claim to love, and protecting yourself, you chose yourself. Every single time, fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I loved you. I would have stood by you. If you'd just told me the truth that day, if you'd just been honest, we could have grieved together. We could have carried that burden together. But instead, you made me the enemy. You made me carry it alone. Her voice hardened. And for that, I will never forgive you. Josh collapsed back onto the couch, his face buried in his hands, his body racked with sobs. But Ava felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy, just cold, detached clarity. She walked out into the rain, and this time, the door closing behind her sounded like freedom. The next morning, Ava walked into the police station with Oliver by her side. She'd called him at 6 a.m., her voice steady and calm. I need you to come with me. Please. He'd been at her apartment within 20 minutes. Now, as they sat across from Detective Maria Hernandez, Ava laid out everything. The original toxicology report, the amended one, the pharmacy records, the bank transfer. Detective Hernandez listened with growing anger, her jaw tightening as she reviewed each document. This is unconscionable, she said finally, looking up at Ava with sympathy in her eyes. Mrs. Hadley, I am so sorry this happened to you. I assure you, we will pursue this to the fullest extent of the law. Within hours, Josh Hadley was arrested at his office. The scene was captured by security cameras, Josh being led out in handcuffs, his face pale and streaked with tears, while his colleagues watched in shock. Dr. Marcus Webb was arrested the same day. The story exploded across the news. Billionaire philanthropist uncovers medical cover-up in tragic child death case. Mother wrongly blamed for daughter's death after husband's cover-up. Doctor paid $50,000 to falsify report in child's death. The media descended like locusts, but this time, Ava was ready. She held a press conference, standing at a podium with Oliver beside her, her voice clear and unwavering. My name is Ava Hadley, she began. 6 months ago, I lost my 3-year-old daughter, Amelia, and for 6 months I believed I was responsible for her death. Her voice wavered slightly, but she pushed through. I was told I left medication where she could reach it. I was told I was careless, negligent. And I carried that guilt every single day, wishing I had died instead of her. Tears glistened in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. But the truth is, I didn't kill my daughter. My husband's medication did. And instead of taking responsibility, he paid a doctor to change the toxicology report to blame me instead. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. I'm standing here today to tell my story, Ava continued. Not for sympathy, but for every parent who has lost a child and been made to feel like it was their fault. For every person who has been gaslit and blamed for something they didn't do. For every victim of a cover-up. She looked directly into the cameras. The truth matters. Justice matters. And no one should have to carry someone else's guilt. The press conference ended with thunderous applause. The trial was brutal. It lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Toxicology reports, financial records, testimony from hospital staff who'd witnessed Dr. Webb's suspicious behavior. Josh's defense tried to paint him as a grieving father who'd made mistakes in the fog of trauma. But the evidence was damning. Dr. Webb turned on Josh, testifying that Josh had approached him with the bribe, had threatened to sue the hospital for malpractice if Webb didn't comply. On the witness stand, Ava testified with quiet strength. She described finding Amelia collapsed, the ambulance ride, the hospital telling her about the medication, Josh's accusations. And when Josh's defense attorney tried to suggest she was an unreliable narrator due to grief, Oliver's legal team destroyed him with documented evidence of Josh's deception. When the verdict came down, the courtroom was packed. Joshua Hadley, guilty on all counts, obstruction of justice, criminal negligence, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. Dr. Marcus Webb, guilty of falsifying medical records, accepting bribes, and obstruction of justice. Josh was sentenced to 7 years in prison and permanent revocation of pharmaceutical license. Dr. Webb received 5 years and permanent revocation of his medical license. As Josh was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at Ava one last time. She didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't feel anything but cold, detached relief. He was finally facing the consequences of his choices. And she was finally free. 3 days after the verdict, Ava stood at Amelia's grave. The rain had finally stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting warm golden light across the cemetery. Ava knelt on the soft grass, her fingers tracing the letters carved into the small white headstone. Amelia Rose Hadley, beloved daughter, forever in our hearts. Hey, baby girl, Ava whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Mommy's here. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the sun wash over her face. I came to tell you something important, she continued softly. We found out the truth, Amelia. We found out what really happened to you. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they were different now. Not tears of guilt, but tears of grief. Pure and honest and finally free of shame. It wasn't Mommy's fault, baby, Ava said, her voice breaking. It was an accident. A terrible, horrible accident. But it wasn't because Mommy was careless. It wasn't because Mommy didn't love you enough. She wiped at her tears with trembling fingers. Your daddy made some very bad choices, and because of those choices, Mommy carried a weight that wasn't hers to carry. But it's okay now. He's facing consequences. And Mommy is learning to forgive herself. The wind picked up gently, rustling the leaves on the nearby trees, and Ava could have sworn she heard the faintest echo of childish laughter. You can rest now, sweetheart, Ava whispered, pressing her palm flat against the headstone. You don't have to worry about Mommy anymore. She's going to be okay. She's got someone very special helping her heal. She smiled through her tears. His name is Oliver, and I think you would have loved him. He's kind and gentle, and he makes Mommy smile again. Real smiles, baby. The kind I used to give you. Another gust of wind, warmer this time. Mommy's not the monster anymore, Ava said, her voice strong despite the tears. I know that now. I was your mama, and I loved you with everything I had, and nothing, not Daddy's lies, not the guilt, not anything, can take that away. She leaned forward and kissed the top of the headstone. I love you, Amelia Rose. Forever and always, until the stars fall from the sky. A shadow fell over her, blocking the sun. Ava looked up to see Oliver standing there, holding a bouquet of white roses, Amelia's favorite. He didn't say anything. He just knelt beside her and placed the flowers gently at the base of the headstone. Hi, Amelia, Oliver said softly, surprising Ava. My name is Oliver. I'm a friend of your Mommy's. A very good friend. Ava's breath caught as she watched him talk to her daughter's grave. I want you to know that your Mommy is the bravest, strongest, most beautiful person I've ever met. Oliver continued, his voice thick with emotion. She fights for other children every single day. She saves lives. She makes the world better. And I think she learned how to love that fiercely because she had you. Tears spilled down Ava's cheeks. I promise I'll take care of her, Oliver whispered. I promise I'll make her smile. I promise I'll remind her every day that she's extraordinary. Because she is, and I think a lot of that is because she was your mama. He reached out and gently touched the headstone. Thank you for that gift, Amelia. Thank you for choosing her. Ava broke down completely. Oliver immediately wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against his chest as she sobbed. But these were different tears. Healing tears, release tears. How did you know? She whispered against his shirt. How did you know exactly what I needed? Because I love you, Oliver said simply, kissing the top of her head. And when you love someone, you learn what they need, even when they don't say it. Ava pulled back to look at him, her eyes red but filled with something that looked like wonder. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Yes, you do, Oliver said fiercely, cupping her face in his hands. You deserve everything good in this world, Ava Hadley. You deserve happiness. You deserve peace. You deserve love. He brushed away her tears with his thumbs. And I'm going to spend every day proving that to you, if you'll let me. Ava's heart felt like it might burst. Oliver Caldwell, she said, her voice trembling but certain. I am completely, terrifyingly, wonderfully in love with you. Oliver's face transformed, his eyes lighting up, his smile breaking across his face like sunrise. Say it again, he whispered. I love you, Ava said, laughing through her tears. I love you, I love you, I love you. Oliver pulled her into a kiss, soft and tender and full of promise, full of healing, full of hope. When they finally pulled apart, they were both crying and smiling at the same time. Come on, Oliver said gently, helping her to her feet. Let's go home. Home, Ava repeated, and the word felt different now. Felt possible. As they walked away from the grave, hand in hand, Ava looked back one more time. The sun was shining fully now, casting Amelia's headstone in golden light, and the wind chimes that hung from the nearby tree sang their gentle song, the same melody that had played in the hospital garden